just because someone has that physique on Instagram doesn't necessarily mean they have that physique in real life. Photoshop and image manipulation is, I think, a lot more common than many people may think. So basically every morning for breakfast, I have bagels. I toast the bagels, very nice, very cool, we like that. But the issue is that when you toast bagels, they get quite sharp. I know you're thinking, Harry, I don't know where you're going with this, but wherever you're going, you're being a bit of a sausage, and you're probably right. But here's the thing. So every morning when I have my bagel, I shove it in my mouth. And obviously I'm not here to take little bites, I'm here to commit to the event. I'm gonna shove as much in as I can because I'm here for the games. I cut my lip like 2 weeks ago right down there on a bagel and it bled, and every time I have a bagel I cut it open again and it really hurts. Honestly, it's so embarrassing. I was like, oh, what happened there? I'm like, yeah, a bagel cut. I know you're thinking, it's like, Harry, take smaller bites, or Harry, stop eating bagels. That would actually be a really sensible suggestion, but definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again expecting a different result. Guess who's insane? Today we're going to do a video. Obviously, we do a video every week. I actually do a video twice a week. So it's going to be a bit more of a workout-based video. And no, this is not by any means a deep dive. This is merely like a first look at someone who I have kind of briefly covered here and there in a previous like compilation workout video I did. And this is someone who's been heavily requested recently, and that is GrowWithJo, who is a content creator on the YouTube and the TikTok and the Instagram. And she's popped up in the comment section many times because people are saying, I like her workouts, can you tell me if you like them too? So that's what we're going to do. Before we do so, you know what must be done. 1,200 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal. So if we could reach that and hit that, that'd be bloody splendid. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below and subscribing to the channel. And maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below the comment question of the week and I shall do so. Yes, I'm aware the screen is very bright. I wish Instagram had dark mode. If it does have a dark mode, why don't I know about it yet? We're going to look through a couple of her Instagram bits and bobs, and we're going to briefly go over her YouTube. Again, this is not a deep dive. If you want me to do a deep dive, I can look at her other bits and bobs. I believe she's got some programs that she sells and some other things along those lines, which I can, like I said, certainly look at if you would want me to, but we shall see. My current favourite underrated glute exercises. Something I should probably pay attention to, let's be honest. Straight leg deadlift to squat. In-out squat jumps. Interesting. Kettlebell swings and good morning to side lunges. Interesting. I think the thing is, when it comes to like glute development, I know you're thinking, Harry, you've got dead glutes. Why are you talking about glute development? I have dead glutes because of laziness and neglecting to train them properly for a long time. That's my own fault and I'm taking responsibility for that. When it comes to glute exercises and just most training exercises in general, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Saying something is underrated kind of implies that it's very effective but isn't heavily utilized. I personally am not a huge fan of doing combo movements, so doing things like this, a stiff leg to the squat, I'm not really a big fan of. I think if you're looking at kind of glute hypertrophy and optimizing glute hypertrophy, which is kind of what is being implied here, you know, to build the glutes, in most cases you want to do the movements individually, but you want to do them well. So I think the RDL is a fantastic glute movement. Again, depending on how you do it, you can alter the movement to essentially bias more hamstrings or bias more glutes depending on how it's done. So a big thing that's going to contribute to that is essentially changing how bent your knees are, so be there a bit straighter, a bit more bent, things along those lines. The same thing with the squat. Again, I don't think it's one of my favorite glute movements, but you can alter foot positioning to bias the glutes a bit more. Again, in and out squat jumps, this is probably a movement that's likely going to cause a lot of burning because you are under tension for a fair amount of time. The range of motion is a bit limited. Again, it's more of a burnout movement, I would say. Kettlebell swings, I do like kettlebell swings. Do I think they're amazing for the glutes? I think they're okay, but I do like them in general. I think they're quite a good movement. Thing is, I always try and keep the arms straight. She's bending your arms quite a lot. I would always try and keep those arms straight and really bring the kettlebell up. Good morning to side lunges. Again, what's wrong with just a normal lunge? And good morning to a tricky one. I think good mornings are okay. When it comes to like the actual movement itself, I would much prefer an RDL. I think the good mornings going to test your lower back a bit more and it may give out a lot sooner. Therefore, is it necessarily the best movement for glute or hamstring hypertrophy? Probably not. I'm not saying it's bad movement whatsoever. I'm just saying I would prefer an RDL. When it comes to obviously training the glutes, I just don't think you need to be too crazy with it. The hip thrust is a fantastic glute movement. The Bulgarian split squat, again, despite how much I hate it and despite how much it just haunts me in nearly every video, I think it is a fantastic movement for the glutes. A leg press can be okay for the glutes. I prefer, when looking at like glute dominance, I prefer a unilateral leg press. But if you are trying to leg press with both legs, legs and kind of bias the glutes a bit more, basically try putting your feet higher up and quite narrow. So obviously imagine this, imagine you are my leg press pad thing, high and narrow. The RDL, obviously, as I said, another fantastic glute movement. There you go, you've got 4 bloody amazing glute movements that you could utilize and incorporate in your lower body days to really help develop the glutes. But due to the nature of those movements being obviously the split squats, the RDLs, etc., you can get a fair amount of quad involvement as well, and hamstring involvement too. So you're not really sacrificing other areas of the lower body just to target the glutes. So you're ticking a lot of boxes there, just maybe not ticking the box for the calves. Just don't wear shorts, don't wear a dress, don't wear a skirt, you're fine. Just wear trousers all the time, no one needs to know how big your calves are. And that's why I tell myself. And that's why I very rarely wear shorts unless I walk outside and 1,000 suns are beaming on my big forehead. And I've said, you know what, that's really hot, I might have to put some shorts on. Ab routine and tips to get an hourglass shape. This is going to be interesting because I already know what's coming up. Stop adding weight to your ab workouts. Using weights will increase your core strength but can widen your waist as well. Personally, when I do train my abdominal region, I do train it like any other muscle. So I will use resistance and I will progressively overload. There was a big myth and misconception that kind of training your abs and your obliques is going to make your waist thicker. That's not necessarily true. Some people genetically do just have a slightly thicker or wider waist. For example, myself, I do have quite a thick waist. Training the abs with resistance or not is not going to change that. You don't have to use resistance if you don't want to, but me personally, I would certainly lean towards incorporating resistance-based ab movements into your workout plan. So for example, if I had to choose one, my favorite would probably be like a kneeling cable crunch. So you're obviously on like a cable machine, rope at the top, and you're crunching down. Just ensure you're reducing the distance between your sternum and your pelvis. So allowing that spine to roll to really utilize that kind of six-pack muscle abdominal region. You don't need to worry about keeping a flat back on movements like that. You want to actively encourage that rounding of the back to then crunch properly. Twisting exercises is great to strengthen and tighten your obliques. Ultimately, one of the primary functions of the obliques is kind of rotation or anti-rotation. Personally, I like things like the pull-off press, more anti-rotational movements, especially if you're doing deadlifts a lot and you mix grip on your movements, doing things like the pull-off press, which is basically like a Russian twist on the cable machine, just without the twisting and just almost like pressing the cable. Really good for anti-rotation, really good for the obliques. It really does come down to your preferences and the movements you'll stick to. Nutrition. Abs really are made in the kitchen. Reduce processed foods, reduce sodium intake, and drink more water. So I think ultimately this comes down to, you could have a very developed abdominal region, but if you are storing more body fat there, it's going to be under that layer of fat, for example. The same with like any other muscle. The higher your body fat likelihood is you'll be less defined. Therefore, to appear and become more defined, so to be able to see more of the muscle, you then would get leaner to show it more. Genetically, you may have a more boxy waist like me, and that's okay. Do what you can and appreciate what you have. You are more than how your body appears. Yeah, no, that's a really good message. I really appreciate that, actually. Again, like I said, my waist is quite thick, which again is fine. It's not ideal. Like for me, I would wish it wasn't sometimes, because obviously if I want to compete on stage, the kind of desired look for the stage is quite a thin waist, which I don't have, unfortunately, but that's fine. There's nothing I can do to really change that. Genetically, that is just my shape and my structure. And I'm very happy I have that structure because I can work around it. Okay, I may not have a particularly narrow waist, but what I can do is get bigger elsewhere to make my waist appear more narrow. It's almost like an illusion. Does that mean you need to do that? Absolutely not. At the end of the day, I say this in so many of my videos, but you are dealt a hand, a genetic hand, will say. This is what your skeleton is. This is your structure of your skeleton, the structure of your body. You can enhance that structure, but the overall kind of base structure and skeleton is there to stay. It's what you have, and it is essentially your canvas. And I say this so many times, but there really is nothing wrong with how you look. I think social media, especially when you look into the realm of like photoshopping and photo manipulation or image manipulation, will say, has almost pushed across this message that everyone has this like really narrow waist and this insane like hourglass shape, whatever it may be. The reality is, just because someone has that physique on Instagram doesn't necessarily mean they have that physique in real life. Photoshop and image manipulation is, I think, a lot more common than many people may think. I've seen lots of influencers being questioned about it recently, mainly on Reddit. Like I said, we had the Chrissy incident a while back. I think Stephanie Buttermore's recently been questioned about it. Again, I don't have an opinion on this because I don't know enough to form an opinion. I can certainly investigate if people want me to. Social media is a highlight reel. People show you what they want to show you, and people show themselves in a manner that alters how they're perceived because it's how they want to be perceived. And at the end of the day, just because an influencer may look a certain way doesn't mean it's reality, nor does it mean that because you don't look the same way that you're wrong or there is something wrong with you. We all have our structure, we all have our skeleton, we all have our shape. Regardless of what that might be, none of them are wrong. They are merely just you, and they're different, they're unique, and that's absolutely fantastic. work with what you do have rather than trying to wish for something you don't have. So no, that's a good message. I like that. Then we got onto a YouTube channel. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on the YouTube channel because a lot of her videos are quite a bit longer. Again, I can say that for a deep dive if you want me to, or maybe I could analyze like individual videos because quite a few of them are quite a bit longer. But essentially, the kind of premise of what I'm gauging from her YouTube channel, especially the more recent stuff, she targets these kind of at-home workouts, either like Tabata dominant seem to be quite favourable at the moment, either for beginners in many cases, or like no equipment, no repeats, kettlebell stuff. I think quite a common theme amongst the home workout creators, which is fine because obviously people are often limited to equipment. People often don't like the fact that most of these workouts do involve a lot of repetition because obviously due to limitations it may be hard not to repeat yourself, things like that. I get that. There are some more somewhat like clickbaity titles like 15-minute lower belly Tabata fat burn for beginners. This kind of does imply a bit of spot reduction of fat, like lower belly Tabata fat burn, and I don't actually see her stating anywhere that you can't spot reduce fat, even in the disclaimer at the bottom. Again, this kind of do this every morning to lose weight. Is it a bit clickbaity? Maybe, but is it kind of clickbait that gives you unrealistic expectations and false promises? Not necessarily. And like I've said so many times before, a lot of people can achieve their goals by eating in a calorie deficit, by resistance training a few times a week, and by doing a few more steps than they currently do, and kind of shooting for a target. 6,000 steps, maybe do 8,000 steps. Things along those lines. I think it would make sense to kind of just go over at least one of the videos today, and we're going to look at the 10-minute fat burn Tabata workout with kettlebell. So from my understanding, Tabata is kind of like an adaptation of HIIT training, so high intensity interval training, where you do a short burst of something, then have a very short rest, repeat, etc, etc. And again, my understanding of very much Tabata is usually about 4 minutes long. That's kind of like, I think how it was originally intended. Clearly this is not 4 minutes long, this is 10 minutes long. So it's probably following a similar principle of fast activity, little rest, fast activity, little rest just for an extended duration of time.
It's time to torch some calories, boost our metabolism, and there's no better way to do that than with some resistance.
I appreciate that actually. She's speaking about how essentially one of the best ways to do what you're trying to do is by incorporating resistance or resistance training. And she's using obviously kettlebell as her example. Resistance training, regardless of what your goals, in most cases, is so overlooked and so beneficial for so many people. I know a lot of people say, I don't want to do any weights because I don't want to get too big. Unfortunately, I wish it was that easy. To gain mass amounts of muscle mass takes a long time, regardless of your gender. Again, it depends how you want to look and what you want to achieve. Developing a little bit of muscle through resistance training can be such a blessing when it comes to things like fat loss and keeping that fat off. I'm going to mute the video because I'm worried that I may get flagged copyright. I don't know if this is a copyright-free song. It appears it might be, but there's always a risk with YouTube. They do get a bit fruity with it. She's keeping moving during her rest period, which I appreciate. So we've got like a front raise to an upright row. Again, I think the thing is, when I kind of think about like Tabata workouts or like high-intensity interval training workouts, I kind of think about more explosive movements, things like swings, things like maybe kettlebell clean and jerks, kettlebell snatches, things along those lines. Movements like this, I don't really know if they have like a mass place because essentially the kettlebell is just being held overhead. It's not going through any real range of motion. Sure, you're moving a bit more. It's probably going to promote a bit more of a sweat because you are moving. I don't think, other than a bit of caloric expenditure, it's going to do a mass amount, especially if you're looking at maybe a bit of muscle building. Oh, there's a squat coming up. Let's assess this depth. Let's have a look. It does look a little bit high with the depth. What she's doing here, she's pushing the hips forward unnecessarily and almost doing that little thrust at the top. Again, I think that is unnecessary. At that point, the glutes aren't really actually under additional tension, so you don't have to kind of over thrust. You'll get a bit more of a pinch, but that's because you're contracting rather than just working. Like if I tense my bicep like that, I'm contracting, but I'm not actually working against the resistance, if that makes sense. An RDL variation, I love an RDL. You could arguably keep the kettlebell a bit closer to the body, but it is good head positioning. Pretty good head positioning. Obviously, she's looking at the camera because she has to. It's a pretty neutral spine. It's pretty good. With RDLs and things like that, regardless of like, I know it's for HIIT purposes, I would always try and just kind of really control that eccentric portion and maybe explode on the way up. Or we do like a kettlebell swing. They've featured a couple times today. Her arms are much straighter in this swing. This is much better than the previous example. Much nicer. But don't worry about squatting down. You've got to remember it's a swing. It's a hip hinge movement. It's not a squat-based movement. I know there's a lot of argument about how you can really kettlebell swing, but from a lot of the things I've seen, minimize how much the knees are bending, sort of thing. Kettlebell row, good movement. When you're looking at like the lats, your upper arm doesn't really need to go past the body. If you're looking at just prioritizing the lats, once it does go past the body, you start bringing the mid back into it a bit more. I know what you're thinking here, because Harry, a very similar movement, but you see the upper arm angle is different, so she's coming out rather than down. So here she's trying to target more of like the rhomboids in the upper back, whereas when the elbow was close to the body, it's a lot more lat dominant. Altering the angle of your upper arm can alter which muscles you're placing greater emphasis on. The thing you have to remember when doing any workout is why are you doing it. So if you're looking at like optimizing the building of muscle, is this going to be a particularly effective workout? Probably not. Not everybody wants to optimize the building of muscle. I completely understand and I respect and acknowledge that. If you're looking at maybe burning some extra calories, is this going to be an effective workout? How effective the workout is essentially comes down to how likely you are to stick at it and how well you're going to perform that workout. When it comes to like single movements like the swing and like the jump squat, etc., in a 20-second period, it's really hard to quantify which one of those movements is going to burn the most calories, because the number of calories being burnt is going to be quite low and there are a lot of variables to consider. But obviously the point of doing things like this is that you do small bursts very frequently for a longer period of time to then accumulate X amount of calories burned. I think things like these would be better suited to maybe beginners, whereas if you're more like intermediate to advanced and want to kind of stay in the realm of home workouts, I'd probably lean more towards Caroline and those kind of creators whose workouts are known for being a bit more demanding and intense. But again, ultimately, when it comes down to these workouts, they're as intense as you make them. So if you have a 20-second period and you want to make them essentially more intense or harder, you do more reps in that 20-second period and move faster. Just don't sacrifice or compromise technique. That's obviously a big concern. I think in conclusion, I think Joe is promoting some solid messages regarding the importance of resistance training and obviously the importance of like nutrition and things along those lines I appreciate. There are some other bits and bobs I maybe not fully aligned with, like I don't necessarily fully align with her favourite underrated glute movements, nor do I necessarily align with the fact that she says you shouldn't do resistance-based ab work. And when it comes to her workouts, from again, I have seen a few of them in fairness. We just looked at this one in particular. These workouts seem to be quite a good entry point for people who are looking to get into some home resistance training. There are some movements I question, say, you know what, it's probably not a movement I would incorporate, and other movements I think, oh, that's a solid one, like for example the kettlebell swing, things along those lines. But I also fully acknowledge and understand when you are limited to a single piece of equipment and you aren't repeating any exercises, due to this, the quality of movement selection will likely suffer, i.e. you aren't necessarily choosing like amazingly effective or great movements. You are probably choosing some of them, but you're also filling in the gaps with slightly different movements, a bit more novel, a bit more fun, to hopefully keep people more consistent. In all honesty, if you're looking at like optimizing training can be quite boring. Although this workout may not necessarily be optimal, but you find yourself being able to remain more consistent with it because it is more fun. Therefore, although on paper and in theory it's not optimal, it may be optimal for you. Does that make sense? Do what's best for you, and the best workout for you is the one you can remain most consistent with. But now that's out of the way, and that is the video. We must obviously crack on the comment question of the week, and it's a bit of a light-hearted one this time from Moose, the MVP of the comment section. I see you. Based on responses from the previous video, it seems like people are very much in favour of the hats returning. I will have to get some hats because I don't have any at this stage. So until the hats arrive, provided that's the route we're going to take, the glasses will stay in the meantime. I don't drink, by the way, and haven't drunk for 9 years now. So I don't know why I'm wearing glasses. That would indicate I do. I've got nothing against drinking whatsoever. I just don't do it personally for personal reasons. What are a couple of your top 5 songs to get you through the last set of your workout? The big thing here is what Moose has said, being the last set of your workout. Not necessarily full gas for a PB attempt. So I'm going to eliminate what I would deem to be aeroplane mode songs. And though that's a playlist, a very small playlist, it's got like 18 songs on, which are the songs I only listen to if I'm going to go for a big PB, like a squat PB, a bench PB, a deadlift PB, or something of significant relevance to me. So I'll remove those songs from my mental library, we'll say. And I'll think about, let's say, 2 of my favourite songs. Lorna Shore of The Abyss, that's probably up there. The last like minute 30, I believe. Oh, it made me cry. It's so good. Honestly, I don't think I've ever liked a band as much as I like Lorna Shore. So I'm going to have one Screamo song, being the Lorna Shore song, and one sad song, because I do love a sad song sometimes. Day Is Gone by Noah Gunderson, because that song hits my feels harder than any other song in the world. But I'm curious to know, what are your top 2 songs? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear it. But that is it. That is the video. 1,200 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal, so we'll shoot for that. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below and subscribing to the channel, and maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you too have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating the period of uncertainty in which I transition from the glasses, potentially back to the hats, and thank you for tolerating the video.